34. I declare the meeting open. Firstly, may I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we meet on today, and I humbly pay my respects to the elders of the Wiradjuri people, past, present and emerging. We all know the emergency procedure: out the door of the corridor, to right, out to the street. I make councillors and crowd aware that we are being live streamed at this meeting in accordance with Council's policy, which is up for renewal. So anything you may say is recorded live, and we need to be aware of that. If the General Manager or myself feel the need to close that live streaming down, we may do so. That takes us along to apologies. Has anyone received any apologies? No, there's no apologies. That takes me to declarations of interest. Has anyone got anything they'd like to declare before we commence? No, thank you. That'll take me to number 6, which is distributed on in front of each councillor, is a confidential mayoral minute. So in regard to that, I'd like to suspend the standing orders currently to deal with that matter after the budget items are dealt with in closed. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Horton. Seconded, Councillor Armstrong. All those in favour? Again? So be it. Thank you, councillors. Before I go any further, I'd like to introduce Ken Fox, the new Acting Director of Infrastructure, to everyone. And I'm sure you'll get round to meeting Ken from up around Armidale Way, I believe, and GHD, so feel free to make yourself known to Ken when you get the opportunity. Good to have you on board. Thank you. On that note, I think I hand over to the General Manager's report.
Just the budget, draft budget. Allocation of funding for the Stronger Communities program.
Thank you, General Manager. The report's there in front of us.
Mr Mayor, can I move that we, given there's a bit of controversy around this, that we move into committee just to discuss this?
Could I move that we move into committee to discuss this? There is some disquiet about it before we actually move the motion.
Do we have a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Rolls. We move into committee to discuss item 1804. Open for discussion.
Look, I might start, Mr Mayor, given I proposed it. The basis of this whole allocation stems from the administration period, and during that administration period, very roughly, Roberts Park was awarded initially $1 million, but then it got back to about $450,000, which was agreed by, there was a sporting user group set up under the HARDEN Shire Council, which I helped instigate with Jess Kavanagh. I was going to say Jess O'Connor, Jess Kavanagh. And the basis of the sporting user group committee was, rather than all the user groups go around in an ad hoc fashion, we try and achieve what Boyer has actually achieved, and that is we look at all the sporting facilities within the town. Each user group look at each other's sporting facilities, and we agree on a process of making sure money gets allocated to those most in need, and then capital upgrades following that line. So when Roberts Park were to get $450,000, McLean Oval nothing, Racecourse nothing, it was agreed by the reformed or sporting user group that sort of sat aside during the administration period that that wasn't the best way to go about it. Councillor Tuckerman and Anthony attended a meeting in Harden. A subsequent meeting was held by the Mayor in December. I don't have the exact date in front of me, at which we agreed on the reallocation of money, and there was $110,000 left in abeyance. And the basis of that was that the user groups were to come back at a meeting to be convened in February, and once again I don't have the exact date, it might have even been early March, but the dates aren't relevant, and the various user groups would put forward their case for the distribution of that 110,000 to either leverage other funding or continue the program that they had put in place. That meeting was attended in February by about 11, 12 people. I turned up late, as I usually do. And the general discussion was that the money be allocated, as you see here, except for McLean Oval. The general discussion was that the 18,000 there go to the tennis club / golf club for a 50% share, a 50% cost of an advisor or a consultant to look into the relocation of the tennis courts to the country club and the general sporting layout, if you will. Now, all the meeting agreed that that was a reasonable allocation, and then it was moved by Councillor Stadmiller and seconded by, as it's got here, Michael Quinn, that this allocation be put forward. Now, no one from the tennis club or the other groups had brought any representatives along, so the Leagues Club dominated the meeting. It was never put forward at the December meeting that there would be a vote taken. It was simply to be, bring forward your proposals, that Mayor Ingram was in attendance at the meeting, Councillor Armstrong was in attendance at the meeting, and I turned up late. So with effectively being outnumbered by the League fraternity, those who had actually done some work, the League people didn't put up any case for the funding. They didn't say what they were going to use it for. They didn't even speak. It was simply moved, seconded, and with the numbers there, voted on. It's not how council money should be allocated, and it's not due process. I really think, whilst Kruger do strongly support the golf club, I don't support what happened. So I'd like to bring it forward in committee rather than actually put forward an alternative motion. I think we need to discuss. I've got real problems with this. The League people do need the money. There is no doubt about that. They need the money. So do a lot of other people. But the way this is done is wrong.
Councillor Rolls?
I'm with you, Councillor Flannery. I have queries about the way this was done. For a start, I don't think any of us knew that this meeting was on, or only a few did, so that we had no input into it. I can understand perhaps those who are in Harden, and if they were on the sports committee, yes, but I query how some councillors were there and others weren't. I also query about the best practice for a councillor putting forward a motion to allocate funds that are actually going to be allocated by council. I wonder about the best practice of that and the way that that was done. So in what you're saying, I support that. I also had a query here about before that motion was moved, had there been an allocation of those funds, which you have just said that some was to go to the tennis club. And if nobody had any reason to think that a motion would be put forward, then I can't understand how it was put forward and then carried.
Okay, it's probably time for me to speak on that then. The meeting was called, as Councillor Flannery noted, after another meeting I had with the community of Harden, who were very unhappy about the allocation of some money. I went over in the spirit that night to listen to the community and see how they wanted to allocate it. They allocated and changed some funding around, and there was a leftover of about 103 to 110,000, Councillor Flannery said, which was decided that the same group of people would come back at a later date, a later meeting, and decide when they've done some more work on their quotes, etc., and where that funding may go. So I again went to Harden to meet with the community of Harden in the spirit that the meeting was organised. It wasn't in the form of a council meeting. I think that the meeting was definitely advertised. Councillors turned up with their own bat. No, I didn't send any special request out for any councillors or notify as a council meeting, as it wasn't a council meeting. It was a meeting I'd organised as the mayor with the community of Harden. That covers that point, Councillor Rolls, and in future times, if that intends to be done, I'll make sure that the whole council is personally invited to those meetings. What happened at that meeting was conversation in regard to where the funding might go, and yes, there was a consensus in the room when some groups presented why they liked the money and the amount they would like to be allocated. And I was at the point of closing the meeting down. And then Councillor Stadmiller asked, at the time I thought was a late call, to readjust some of the funding that was there. It wasn't an official council meeting, but there was a meeting as we were in the room. And he spoke to what he wanted to put. He had a seconder. I'm going off the top of my head now because there's no in-depth minutes kept, but I'm pretty sure one of the other groups spoke and said, well, we thought we'd allocated it. Just as I put the vote, Councillor Flannery arrived and put his hand up to vote with Councillor Stadmiller's readjustment.
That's correct.
I said to Councillor Flannery at the time, I won't take your vote. You haven't been present at this meeting. Oh, but yes, you can. I said, no, Tony, I can't take your vote, and I won't. The vote was 6-5 to the resolution that's in front of you now. There you go. It was documented, noted, and I left the meeting with that resolution. There was a, let's call it, for the sake of a better word, a kerfuffle at the end of that meeting by a member of the Harden community who was most upset at how that allocation had been changed around. I'm not going to mention his name, but his behaviour drew the attention of the people at the facility we were at to the point where they came up and asked us, was everything all right? Councillor Flannery left that meeting because of some of the abuse that was coming his way at the time.
And can I just interject, because the discussion I had with Councillor Stadmiller earlier that day was not substantially different, but different to what I understood was put forward. So when I thought I was voting for what I was voting for, it wasn't the case. So
well,
the other person abused the hell out of me.
I'll go back to where I was speaking. I can't read minds, and I wasn't aware of that. All I knew was you came in to vote with Councillor Stadmiller after having a conversation, apparently, with Councillor Stadmiller during the day. So that was the good faith I said to the gentleman who was upset that I came there for. He said, you shouldn't have allowed that to happen. I said, I came here as the mayor in good faith to talk to the Harden community because they had asked me to be here to disperse these funds in a manner that their community saw it fit. And the people who saw it fit, I presume, were at that meeting. It was well advertised, it was well known it was going to happen. I don't see there was any other option that I had. I brought that resolution home. It was supposed to be in the minutes of our council meeting previously, as we all know, and it was missed. So therefore, I ensured that the General Manager brought that report to council tonight. Now, the group that Councillor Flannery referred to that were after that $18,000 and $19,000 to do a study sent an email to me the very next morning informing me that the matter had been taken care of. That the Kruger Trust, who was going to snap up 50% of it originally, had gone ahead and stumped 100%. At that meeting in Harden, it was mentioned by a councillor who was with me about some probity issues and about funding being given to groups to employ consultants and architects from out of town without council procedure being done. So that was also mentioned. That was all resolved the next morning when I received the email stating that the full cost of that study, I think it was $42,000, had been covered by the Kruger Trust. So I thought that was the end of the matter. The resolution's in front of you. If anyone else would like to speak, that's what happened from the moment I arrived at the meeting till I left.
Mr Mayor, if I may.
Councillor Stadmiller.
The meeting held in December to allocate far larger amounts of money, up to $350,000 to the tennis court and various other facilities, was held at the Mechanics Institute. What I did was exactly what the person who moved that motion did on the night, moved a motion from the floor, and it was seconded and it went to a vote. and it made it into the business paper based on the vote on the night and was ratified by council. I disagree that anyone was brought along to support, in particular, one thing over another. One gentleman was there who's a member of the tennis club and was wearing a Harden Hawks jumper, but you could say was wearing two hats. And I think Michael and Shelley Quinn, a married couple of Harden who are involved in the football club, attended. Michael seconded the motion as stated here. As a councillor, I was put in a position where I had to make a decision based on where I thought the best place for that money would be, and during the tennis club's presentation they made it very, very clear that they were being backed by the Kruger Trust, which has a substantial amount of money in their coffers. The tennis club had already received $350,000, and I thought it was in the best interest of McLean Oval, who currently at that stage had $114,000, to receive a little bit more. So I moved the motion to do so. It was supported, and it's been brought to this meeting like the motion was at the December meeting, and I expect councillors to follow the protocol that you set and the precedent you set at the original meeting by allowing that to happen, and follow the wishes of the Harden sporting public, even if the vote was close at 6-5. I don't believe I've done anything wrong. I don't believe that because I'm a councillor I couldn't attend a public meeting and move a motion. We had a member of the HRDC and the tennis club move a motion at the December meeting for far substantial amount of money, more than what I did, so I think we should just get to the point and vote on it.
Thank you, Councillor Stadmiller. And
Mr Mayor,
Councillor,
just a quick question. Do you recall how many were at the meeting?
the vote was 6-5, and I think everyone in the room, bar myself and Councillor Armstrong, voted.
Right.
Councillor Armstrong, would
Thank
that
you.
be correct? Was there more there? I don't think.
I believe that one
didn't vote.
person did not vote.
That's right. Exactly. So there would have been 12 in attendance and 13 when Councillor Flannery came in the room. Councillor O'Connor.
Mr Mayor, it was the process that was the issue. I was on the receiving end for about 2 weeks about a meeting I didn't know was on, and about the process that was followed, and these were people who said that either been at the meeting or were in one of the clubs that were involved. The issue wasn't that, you know, the rugby league club doesn't need the money, and we all know it does. The issue was that they didn't put in a proposal like the other clubs had, and therefore they felt slighted because they'd done the right thing, and this was jump-started, you know, ahead of time. For those of us in Harden who didn't know the meeting was on, like, I didn't actually know how to respond because I hadn't realised what the issues were, and I did get one call that was very emotional, very emotive, and it took me quite a while to calm the person down enough to actually explain what the issue had been. So it was the process that was the issue.
So I take on that, Councillor O'Connor, that as Councillor Stadmiller just pointed out, and rightly so, and I hadn't thought of it in that vein, that you would have had the same feelings about the initial meeting I had about the big money with the Harden community prior to December, and it was well publicised as well, and I'm not sure whether you were there at that one or not, neither, but the same process was used at both meetings.
Can I ask, at that first meeting, did a councillor actually put forward the motion? Because I think that's at the crux of the matter too, because as councillors...
Point of order, Mr Mayor. It's
Should
actually not a motion, it's a recommendation.
Recommendation.
Thank you,
pardon me.
Councillor Tuckman.
What's the recommendation
I think
made
memory,
by councillor?
you're testing my memory out now, really are, but I'm not too sure. Councillor Flannery might be able to answer that, because I think maybe he was part of one of those resolutions that moved money from one of the parks to the other. I think, yeah, I won't stand behind that because I'm not sure.
There's various sporting user groups in Harden. The most successful to date has been the Roberts Park Trust. I'm digressing a little bit.
We are.
But because of the well-structured committee, basically headed by, well, not headed by Trish Murphy, but she's been integral to the committee. They have had a long-term plan for their facility, and as a result they were allocated the majority of the money. Now, be that as it may, I'm on the Roberts Park Trust to me and to a lot of people in the room at the December meeting, I guess council during the administration period was in a position where time constraints, a whole lot of reasons, didn't go to all the sporting user groups. They said, we've got a very coherent plan in front of us. They allocated the money to Roberts Park. Now, that was readjusted. That's probably Chris.
So Manchester, yep.
At the December meeting, there would have been at least 80 people. So it was a pretty good representation of the community versus 11, of which I can pretty safely say, because and a couple of the league fraternities said they wish it hadn't happened what happened that night. And they've said that to me, but I would say there was 5 league people there out of the, and there was obviously 6 to get enough votes over the line. But you've got widely divergent. The majority of the money that was allocated in the December meeting had already been allocated. The tennis courts were already getting 350, and in fact Anthony McMahon said to them back in July, use it or lose it. He said either start to put some plans in place or we'll reallocate it. Now, it was me who would have been a beneficiary, I guess, if you want to put it that way. I have no kids using Roberts Park anymore, but to me it didn't make sense for Roberts Park to get all the money when I knew other facilities and when I helped set up that committee were seriously underfunded.
Yeah, we're digressing with
so I didn't propose at the meeting, but I was part of the group that said we need to share this money around equally. At the December meeting, the rugby league guys were offered 80. Someone said to them, what do you need? And they said 114 will be more than enough. 114,000. They were allocated 114,000 in December. They came back with no further plan at the February meeting. They were simply allocated this money. I don't know whether it's for football jumpers, for shelves. They didn't give a case. But in December, they said 114,000 would be what they would need. I don't believe it's. I believe they need more than that. But that's.
Okay, Council. We've been around in committee and talked. I think everyone's got the crux of what happened.
Mr. Mayor, can I please ask a
Councillor
question? Was this meeting a meeting of the Harden Sports user groups?
It was a meeting that was announced and called at the same meeting where the 70 or 80 people attended in December. It was agreed by that meeting of people that were there that another meeting would be held. The date was set while everyone was there for the reallocation of this money. So everyone in the room, 70 or 80, as Councillor Flannery said from the first meeting, were well aware of the second meeting, and it was advertised, and that's what the meeting was for. If Goodwill's going to bring this to Council and myself, it won't be repeated.
I have an issue with the whole process and how it's being conducted, and I'm really unclear on who wants what.
It appears that the community of Harden are also having the same difficulty. From what I'm gauging tonight, as I said, Councillor Flannery explained that he'd had a different version of what might have been said, but he came in to vote for this at that meeting. Look, I'm going to come out of closed and into council again to see where this goes. The second option where the money was being sought had been solved that very night and the next morning. So we'll go back. We'll go out of committee.
Can I ask another question in regards from a staff perspective? Who is, as Councillor Flannery pointed out, we're allocating this money. Do we have any idea what we're allocating it to?
Well, the reason these meetings took place, Councillor Tuckman, was because they weren't happy with the allocations as it was handed out previously.
I understand that, but where are we up to with what is actually happening with the money?
If we get into that conversation here tonight, we'll be here all night with all the projects that are allocated. So I understand your point. I do understand your point. But what we have in front of us is a recommendation.
Can we have this deferred for a fortnight to the next council meeting?
Okay. Would someone like to move we come out of committee? Yeah. Move Councillor Wallace. Second to Councillor Armstrong. Councillors, we have a recommendation in front of us. It is recommended that Council allocate the remainder of the Stronger Communities funding money allocated to the Harden Sports Group in the following manner. Racecourse user group 80,000, McLean Oval Rugby League Club 18,000, and Tim Doolan Oval Cricket Clubs 5,000. Do I have a mover? Moved Councillor Stadmiller. Do I have a seconder? seconded Councillor Armstrong. Would you like to, anyone like to speak for or against?
Mover of the motion.
The mover of the motion speaks first.
I'll speak for it, Mr Mayor. We seem to be getting bogged down in arguments about money that we know this club deserves, and Councillor Flannery's already conceded that himself. I don't think there's any need to defer it a fortnight. After the previous meeting in December, it then came to the next available council meeting, was put up in a similar report with a much larger amount of money, and was made a resolution of Hilltops Council. We're dealing with $103,000 here. The football season started in Harden, and there's ladies league tag players that are still getting changed in their car, taking their clothes off, having to put them back on, and so forth. Basically leaving themselves open to be leered at by people. It's not good enough in this day and age that we expect women to have to endure that when there are dressing sheds there for the Harden Hawks senior side and youth league side. They can't all be accommodated in the one facility. This isn't only about the privacy of young women. It's about just getting on with the job and getting this done. To delay it a fortnight, there's no need. We just need to move ahead and make sure that this money is delivered. If the racecourse users group gets up in the Stronger Country Communities funding and doesn't need that $80,000, I'd be pushing for McLean Oval to get some of that, because they were also operating out of a kiosk that if we put the health inspector in there, they'd probably have some issues, as well as dressing sheds that are in the 1970s and a shed that's 5 years old that doesn't have any cladding on it and hasn't been fitted out, and $18,000 would go a long way to putting up some stud walls and some gyprock. The plumbing's there, and having this solved. Tim Dorland's after $5,000 to finalise the cricket board to a former mayor in Bob Spackman, who was instrumental in establishing that. And the racecourse users group, which represents 4, 5, up to 6 different groups, would like that. It's a shame it didn't come to the last meeting. It's here now. Can we please deal with it? I don't want this to go on forever. We've got a lot to do tonight. It's $103,000. There's things in this plan tonight, in the delivery plan, where we're going to quickly skim over $4 and $5 million worth of infrastructure, I would expect, and we're going to sit here and bicker over 103 in the process that went on. The Harden community needs this and needs this now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stadmiller. Anyone would like to speak against the recommendation? Councillor Flannery.
Look, I'd like to speak against it because of the process, and I accept McLean Oval do need the money. I also, it is true of McLean Oval about female change rooms. It's also true of Roberts Park. It's also true of the showground. It's also true of the racecourse. So there's not a facility in Harden, and it was my concern at the last meeting that we had, there is not a facility in Harden that has male and female change rooms. Yet when I tried to get some funding reallocated at the last meeting, it was Councillor Stadmiller who actually wouldn't support that reorganisation of money. I tried. It would make sense for Harden to have facilities akin to what Brewer was proposing.
You're talking to this point?
Yes, I am talking to this point, just like Councillor Stadmiller talked to the broader points a minute ago. Thank you. I wholeheartedly agree that if the racecourse gets its $100,000, this should be allocated, but that is making bad decision after bad decision. I believe this should be deferred. We need to go back and find out what these people are actually spending their money on and bring it to the next council meeting when we can make a proper decision.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Anyone further speakers for?
Mr Mayor, clarification. Has there been an amendment proposed? Or
No.
No.
Okay.
If there's no more speakers for the motion, anyone else like to speak against the recommendation?
Yeah, yes, Mr Mayor. Look, I'd certainly agree with what Councillor Flannery's comments are. You know, there's been an allocation or been asking for money from the race group of $800,000 out of the last lot of grants and the McLean Oval a similar amount. There just seems to be a lot of money being thrown there and not much thought going to what it's all for. So I believe that Councillor Flannery's right that we need a report on what they're actually proposing to do. Because you're looking at nearly $1 million, with all this and the other stuff that's been allocated to those two projects, it's in excess of $1 million.
Thank you, Councillor Manchester. Okay, we've got speakers for, speakers against. Do you have the last right of reply? Councillor Stadmiller.
We've got a pretty good indication as to where the money's going for the racecourse and Maclean Oval, because they put in architecturally designed plans to the Stronger Country Communities Funds, which details more dressing sheds and a grandstand and all this sort of infrastructure. $815,000, I believe, for Maclean Oval, and $838,000, I believe, for the racecourse. So since December, there's been a lot of movement into what the Harden community and those particular groups and user groups want, and it's certainly changed from being happy with $114,000 to something far more substantial. Whether they get up or not after the analysis is done by the state government is another matter, but they were told to put in for what they wanted, and they did, and this $18,000, I have no doubt, will go to fitting out the maroon and cream coloured shed, which is basically empty inside, with the facilities needed. There's no need for another report. If we're going to bring a report back for these three, we might as well go back to the December meeting where a far larger amount of money was decided upon, and bring reports back for each of those as well. Or we can go all the way back to the $14 million and go over the whole thing again if everyone wants to. So really this is just getting silly. $103,000 needs to be allocated tonight. I think it's ridiculous.
Thank you, Councillor Stadmiller. Okay, we've had speakers for and against the recommendation that's there in front of us. All those in favour of the recommendation, can we have a show of hands, please? 3. Those against? The recommendation is lost.
Mr Mayor, I'll move that the report come to the next council meeting detailing...
It's dealt with.
You had to move in it.
Someone wanted an amendment that should have been moved before this. Councillor Tuckman asked. I thought it was going to happen then.
Yeah.
I actually foreshadowed that if it was lost, I would move an amendment for it to be deferred for the report for the next council meeting.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you foreshadow at all.
I said I'd like to speak against it, and if it's voted against, it should be deferred till the next council meeting.
It's up there. You can take it on the floor if you want.
We'll have to come to the next council meeting anyway, so it
Yeah.
doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Fair
That's
enough.
right.
Yeah.
Yep. Can't sit there. My point about that is going back to my involvement with the procedure and how it went, apparently. I'd strongly suggest if that, for reasons that I won't state, if that number 2 project had gone to the where it was sent to the tennis club at the golf course, this would have been passed and dealt with and finished. We'll move on. General Manager's report, next item.
Second report is the public exhibition of the integrated... Oh, sorry. Next report is the public exhibition of the integrated planning and reporting reports and the suite of documents that are associated with that. These are all before you to actually, for consideration to go out to public exhibition. During that period we'll be seeking submissions from the community, and also probably the opportunity for us to do some reviews if we need to, based on some of the submissions that are coming through, for a period of 28 days, and for adoption, we plan to adopt it at the 27th of June meeting.
Mr Mayor, if I could just ask a question of the General Manager. What's the water pipeline to Harden?
That's Boorowa. It's meant to be the Boorowa pipeline.
Oh, okay.
Would someone like to move that we move into committee to discuss?
I'll move.
Councillor Fennery.
I'll second that.
Seconded Councillor Tuckman. Thank you. So, Council, we're in committee now to discuss the budget papers that are in front of us.
Mr Mayor, without going through them one by one, but there are some typos through the report that need someone reading through, so I assume they'll get dealt with. Look, a few things without being too pernickety about it. If we go through the various plans placed, can we abbreviate them? A lot of these cross paths, and I realise they've probably been lifted from various reports, but and if you go to, I'll have to find the page, but there's also some inconsistencies. But if we go to page 28 and 29, and I will get on to more substantive matters, but the objective, Hilltops community maximise renewable and affordable energy resources, is an objective, and there's a list of criteria there, or delivery program activity. 29, strategy 2.3.4, work with industry and government to facilitate natural gas provision to the region. Now, does that mean we are supportive of fracking in this community? No, I wouldn't have thought so, but there is the very, very real possibility, because natural gas comes from the earth, and we need to be a little bit consistent, I think. I mean, but if we're supporting natural gas, we are supporting mining, so we just need to be a bit clearer on what we're trying to achieve, because I don't see what our actual program is, and I don't see how we're going to. If we're after renewable energy, we should be, as I pointed out at the strategic planning meeting, getting quotes on replacing all the streetlights with LED, all the various infrastructure assets we own, LED. I mean, they're the real things that actually need to happen. I know we've got a solar to go in. I think it's been listed as young. I would have thought we should be doing all the council buildings, and I think Boyer was already a step up in that regard. When we get into general expenditure and noting the, I guess, the direction of the report, I think we need to look at postponing some of these infrastructure spends. I believe we should be looking at postponing the workshop at Boorowa. I think we need to have a real hard look at the council facility. I can't see how a report that is alluding to the fact that we can't afford the cost of our asset replacement is looking to borrow money to replace assets we don't need at the moment. A new library for young is good. It's funded in part funded out of the strategic plan, the community grant money. But when you look at roads, flooding in Young, I can't support borrowing the sorts of money they've got listed here. $2 million for a workshop in Boorowa, $1.5 million for a library. They might be part of a long-term strategic plan, but they're not actually giving any productivity increases. So I welcome comment from others and go through them on a line-by-line basis, but once we make a decision to borrow that money, it's locked in concrete.
May I make a comment?
General Manager, comment?
I just want to make the comment that there's been a fair bit of discussion around the Boorowa Depot project. I've given a personal undertaking that I don't feel that project should review unless it's been subject to a full process review on the whole thing in terms of the business allocation and whether the funding is actually appropriate for that. We've left it live because it's been part of previous plans. I'm happy that if you pass resolutions tonight, doesn't actually have the words included, subject to business process review or something like that to it. Okay.
Councillor Tuckman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I totally agree. I think the project needs to be reviewed. I'm not sure where the $2 million loan or when that was proposed. I certainly had a look at the documentation regarding the funding, and a little bit perplexed with the whole allocation of some of those funds and the project itself, talking about decontaminating when the site's not contaminated. We've done studies in regards to the contamination. Yes, there's fuel tanks that need to be decommissioned, but that's certainly a very different allocation spend against that than what was proposed in that information that we have. So I totally agree that I do not think that the loan should be implemented as a part of the budget process, and quite frankly, a $3.5 million depot is, to me, just ridiculous. When that $1 million was allocated to the project, I was advised that $1 million would do the relocation, and certainly some further discussion around it may just go over the $1 million, but certainly there's ways to fund that allocation better, whether it be disposal of some assets. But until we actually understand what's being proposed and those figures are scrutinised, I certainly agree with Councillor Flannery.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I concur with Councillor Tuckerman and Councillor Flannery. I think it's good that we're thinking about improving the bottom line. Our first year as a council, and it's not looking good. Another thing that I noticed there was that we're working at, we're committed to peg the rating at 1.5% increase a year for the next 3 years, and then we're working on a 2% increase in costs. Now, inflation, I believe, will be more than 2% over the next 3 years. Things are starting to pick up in the country, so there's going to be a big gap there between what we've budgeted for our rate increase of 1.5% and what actually our overheads and costs are going to be.
So where are you seeing 1.5, John?
It's 2.3.
Well, I thought I read it in here today. No?
Water and sewer.
Okay, well, if it's 2.3, where did I read that? Okay, if I've read that incorrectly. 2.3 is more realistic because inflation will certainly be that at least.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Councillor Horton. Councillor O'Connor.
Could we just go back to the delivery plan, like start at the delivery plan
You can
and then move
You can
forward?
speak wherever you like to speak.
Okay, I would just like, there's a couple of places in page 31, in 3.1, where there are plans for beautification of entry points, including road and rail to the 3 main townships. And that's 3.1.1.2.1. And then just down to point 4, work with partners to beautify and develop the railway precinct in Harden, which is the end of that create a welcoming environment for visitors to the region. And it's timelined for 2021, and it's for as provider facilitator. Could we change that to the timeline of 2019, and instead of provider facilitator where council would be expected to put money in, could we change that just to supporter collaborator, because it's gaining momentum at the moment and I wouldn't like to put that project back a couple of years. If we can actually get some of this project going without council having to put money into it, then it's saving council money and it continues the momentum on the project that's happening at the moment.
Just to comment, probably the principle behind this is over-promise, over-deliver and under-promise. But so this is a target year. If you exceed it before then, you've still achieved it. Yeah.
So it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't really matter that much. Yeah. But it does. But what you reminded me of is that in this there are various commitments, a lot of commitments, that we need to be careful how we actually manage the expectations that are going to be created by this. Now, this has come from the community, and that's a lot of their expectations are in here. But we, as a council and as a managers group, and actually being able to having to manage those expectations, we're going to have to be very careful about the messages we give and how we actually go about achieving some of this. Because some of it is not us to achieve; it's actually, like you're saying, there's various groups within the community and others to do, and just the facilitation of that takes a lot of time as well.
Thank you.
Mr Mayor, on a point of clarification, when we were reading the previous correspondence during the workshop, it actually said that the railway precinct was in a list along with others that didn't have any funding that should be allocated to it, and we received the information tonight and it's moved from that list. Can anyone clarify that, why that's occurred?
The definition that was put in the Capital Works program, we didn't understand that meant that precinct. So it had already been in the documents that you had. It just was not spelled, we just didn't understand what the description related to.
So it shouldn't have actually been in that list with other things that we're saying we couldn't fund?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just a question.
Councillor Armstrong.
Is this project ever part of the 10-year financial plan for the former Harden Shire Council?
Microphone.
No, I don't believe it ever was as part of a funding program in the Harden Shire. This was originally going to be funded by, it was a project of Darren Sargent's, who is a director on the Kruger Trust, and I believe that's where the funding was going to come from.
Did the 10-year financial plan include maintenance costs for this area at all? If there's no allocation at all, was Kruger going to fund the maintenance as well?
No, no, I don't believe that the Kruger were going to fund the maintenance. I don't think it got down to that stage because we were still negotiating with, who's Rick, is it Rick or whichever ARTC about the lease of the land, and we couldn't get an answer from them for years and years and years, and so it was never got down to the final planning of what was going to happen there and final costs or the final maintenance program.
It was certainly part of the strategic plan of Harden Shire that we try and get a peppercorn rent on that land, and there were plans drawn up for the development of it. It was never put into a financial costing because we weren't ever able to get it. We barely got a response from ARTC, let alone being able to actually engage on any numbers.
Obviously my concern is that any development of that nature is going to have very significant ongoing maintenance costs, and if the community has never had the opportunity to comment on those costs or has never been made aware of those costs, then these are new costs to council, and perhaps we should consult with the community before we progress the project too far.
I couldn't agree more. I have the same concerns about the last lot of $5.1 million of funding we put in and $14 million. I absolutely couldn't agree. I'd like to know where the maintenance costs of a Chinese garden are going to come for, the library, you name it. We're going to have a fair few costs to fund in the coming years. I haven't seen any ongoing costings.
Councillor Fenner, I agree with you. There's some $21 million of capital works in windfalls from the state government. Even at 1% depreciation and 1% annual maintenance costs, this council will need to find an additional $400,000 to simply keep and own the free gifts. I think that a $400,000 increase in the general rate is going to exceed the return is going to exceed the 2.3 or 2.4% that's allowed in the 10-year financial plan. So I can see this council going into an ever-increasing spiral financially and perhaps risk yet another merger because of poor financial performance. I would like to think that this council could remove from its capital works programs anything that wasn't funded by grants or any asset renewal programs or asset renewal works, and park the rest for a period of 3 years. Otherwise, we will be broke.
Councillor Armstrong. General Manager.
Yep, just quickly. This is the strategic plan. It's been set as a goal to us with the community's consultation. The council at a recent meeting actually resolved to actually accept this as a project, which then gives it the status. It doesn't mean that you've actually accepted the funding or any other method of actually delivering the project or the ongoing maintenance costs. These are all legitimate discussion items that need to be had with the community as we work through the project and the long-term implications of actually doing the work and what it means. And I think it's something that, it doesn't mean that we've accepted it here. It just means that we've actually accepted the concept of doing it, and we need to work on it a lot more before we actually do it. Anything in this plan, strategic plan, community strategic plan, right? We are required to report on it 6 monthly to you guys, and as well as the community 12 months. At various periods, we will actually be making a recommendation saying that some of this will say not achievable. All right? And we will advise the community that we've actually looked at it and this is a project that is not achievable for the following reasons and things like that. Other things we'll say we'll be able to progress if we receive funding from another source or whatever to do that, and that's the way it works.
Thank you.
So in reflection, Mr Mayor, if I could speak, It's about the vision for the community, and our role as council is to make sure that we're assessing our assets, what we can maintain, what we can't maintain, and that's the information that is so vital to going forward and completing our vision and being sustainable.
Mr Mayor, I couldn't agree more with Councillor Tuckerman in regard to maintenance. We can't even get the people who are meant to clean the Harden railway station to clean it at the frequency that would allow customers to turn up and step off a train and not tread in pigeon shit or tread on a dead pigeon. On top of that, the lighting's so insufficient that I went to pick up my father there about a week ago and he tripped over coming up a ramp because it was too dark for him to see where he was going. So until we can actually get the basics right of how to clean the facility and to light the facility properly, or man the facility.
Point of order, Mr Mayor, it's not actually our facility. So.
I know that, but until we can get the government agency who is looking after it to do that, they're not going to take much interest in another project.
Understand your concerns, but as I alluded to, that's something we need to address with another agency. We're in committee talking about budget matters. If anyone else got anything else like to speak on before Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've got a fairly long list, as you can imagine. I suppose firstly in my investigations of actually looking at what rural rates were for surrounding councils, which was interesting in the sense that, is that my...
Someone else?
Try again? Interestingly, the rates, at least for the former Bora and former Young Shire areas, seem to be at the top end of those of our surrounding neighbours, but that's a sideline. I did notice that in the Wedden information that they were conducting budget estimates meetings back in March. Seemed prudent to me, and I'm sure someone who's particularly astute in council staff will remind me that we're not in Wedden, but that's what they did, and that is what we used to do in Young. And I think this process has been an absolute disgrace. To be presented with a fait accompli 1 week before this meeting, I think is just appalling.
Sorry. Just to stop that.
And there's been no process. It's been absolutely without process. At that workshop, I requested certain information, and I followed that up the next morning with an email before business hours even opened in the hope that I'd get more information. Some information was forthcoming, but not all of it. I asked for significantly more detail on the operational plan. It has not been forthcoming. I looked at Cootamundra Gundagai, and I know we're not in Cootamundra Gundagai, but as a point of reference, their operational plan for last year went to 4,000 lines on their operational plan, and it gave real detail to what was happening, and that was just what was printed. I'm sure the councillors themselves received far more detail than that again. Section 232 1B of the Local Government Act 1993 states that the role of a councillor is to make considered and well-informed decisions, and C of the same section says that the role of a councillor is to participate in the development of the integrated planning and reporting framework. I feel as though I'm in breach of those provisions of the Act, because I'm not well informed, because I can't get the information. It hasn't been provided in a timely manner, and some of it hasn't been provided at all. Nevertheless, I'll go through the questions I have directly relating to the plans as they stand. I sincerely doubt whether I'll be voting to pass this thing tonight, because I just think it's absolutely disgraceful. But anyway, page 70, it says there that there of the document there will be no borrowings, which doesn't seem to accord with the later information that there were borrowings. This is further complicated by the fact that last Wednesday, when we were at the workshop, there were 3 projected borrowings for this forthcoming financial year. By the time this document arrived with us on Friday, there were only 2. And I know why that's happened since, because I've spoken to the Mayor about it, but this is the process we have. We should have been discussing these borrowings back in March and whether we needed them and what they should be for. But no, we've got one day we've got a borrowing for $1.5 million, and less than 48 hours later it's not there. It's just disappeared. This isn't process. This is a joke. Going on. Page 150. This is the example of the lack of detail. Plant purchases, 4.4 million. I have no idea what that's for. We seem to, in council, just approve every purchase of plant as it comes before us on the basis that it does. And intriguingly, in the 10-year forward plan for this item, it doesn't increase at all. Is this to say that machinery costs aren't going to go up? I have no idea. Furthermore, in the long-term financial plan, I think it may be there, but it's not clear if it is codes for the funding source. I did bring up the funding sources last Wednesday. If there's an explanation as to what those codes are and what they mean to the public so they can understand? And furthermore, in the delivery program, there are 2 columns at the end there that have it full of codes. I don't know what they are, and I'm sure the public don't know what they are either. So it's just meaningless at this stage. I'm interested in the rural roads gravel resheeting. I see that Young on page 153 is budgeted $487,000. I wanted to know what it was previously. My memory says that it was a far higher figure in previous years. I'll just get some information on that. Yeah.
The funding was much higher, and we've moved some of it to Roads to Recovery funded.
Sorry, say again.
There is funding under Roads to Recovery to fund that gap what you've used to seeing to now in gravel resheeting. So if you go further down to Roads to Recovery.
362.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So page 155 refers to the loan funds of $3.5 million. I forget, that's probably more of this loan stuff. I think we're going to have to try and come to some conclusion in relation to the 3 items tonight, because it's far from clear what they should be. Page 158. I've got the wrong page, I'm saying sorry. No, yeah, page 158. Because I haven't been provided with further detail of the operating budget, what is other revenues, $2.5 million?
It could be leases, rents, private work. No, private works comes under fees and use charges. A point of reference for getting this detail is in your note 3. It gives those splits of what makes up those statutory terms, categories. So under other revenues, it actually lists contributions, refunds of insurances, and so it has a list in there, Tony, which we could provide.
That's not here though, is it?
No, it isn't.
Why couldn't you provide me with more information? Even last year's operational plan had far more detail and did it by the themes, which you've now provided for us by email, which I first saw today, which gave detail on what some of these figures were and what goes to make them. Why aren't they in the operational plan this year?
They were supposed to be in the long-term financial plan.
Yeah.
On Friday, when we're getting it out, I missed putting it in, which is why we sent it out on Monday. It will be, that theme sheet will be in the long-term financial plan. So that
forms part of this document?
Yes, it will.
Right. Well, it's a breach of the code of meeting practice, but anyway, okay. Also, page 158, because we still don't have any detail, net gain from the disposal of assets. So there's nothing forecast there, and yet if the Barora depot were to proceed, surely there should be some figure there, should there?
Only if it's deemed to be a profit. That's your profit on those things.
Okay. Now, going down to the expenses part, we've got a figure there of $16 million for employee benefits and on costs. Some break-up of that would be good. I just can't believe this page here, 158, is the operating budget. That's what we know as a council. If I was to go before the Office of Local Government and they said to me, what did you know about the you were spending $16 million on employees? I've got absolutely no idea. And the council staff haven't told me. It hasn't been discussed in workshops. I just find it staggering. Materials and contracts, $11 million. What's that for? Other expenses, $4.8 million. What is that for?
Electricity, gas, governance costs. I'm trying to think.
Could we get this information? If you don't know, we definitely don't know.
I can give you what makes up each of those things. The model that we use, which it's not sophisticated enough when you're bringing the three together, doesn't allow for that level of detail at this stage. We're weeks away from implementing a new finance system which will make this budgeting process a lot easier for us as well. But the model that we have doesn't allow us to give that. I can tell you what's in each of those areas, and I can reconstruct the model.
But if you've got the answers there, the conclusions, the totals, surely you know the figures that went into making them up.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
But I don't have the ability to filter those out to the lines that you need quickly.
We've got a problem, don't we? Moving on, page 205 of that, I noticed that the Boer workforce has gone up by nearly 25%. Could we get some explanation as to why that is?
Transfer of weeds.
Thank you. I thought although it was slightly illegible, the page 209, firstly, it was a higher staff turnover. I think that was fairly plain. And then on the next page was the staff satisfaction survey graph, which is somewhat hard to read, but it doesn't make for very good reading. Going to the documents that were provided today and apparently now form part of this plan, bear with me for a moment, I'll have to go to those. Okay. Firstly, the community section on page 2 of that document. Emergency management income has decreased by over $100,000 for the next budgeted year. Why is that?
Over $50,000 income for it was a $50,000 grant to council for the merger from emergency services, and that figure can also be influenced by the level of grant expenditure. So if there isn't there may not be an equivalent in the capital area for that income.
And yet it's projected to go up again the following year.
Yep. Depending on what the capital process is.
Down again.
Yep. There may be additional stations in that year that need to be funded, and that's why that goes up and down.
Okay.
Just to answer your question too, the RFS give us a 3-year program, budget program, which would actually make those figures up.
Those former councillors on Young Shire Council would be aware that I've always thought that our management of the airport has been inadequate. I see here that we've got an income of $1,000 and we're spending $57,000 to maintain it. I wonder if any work's being done on the commercial use of that facility. No. Yep, that's what I thought. The toilet cost in 2023 seems to public toilets. Sorry, the expenditure, yes, jumps from up to 1.34 million. I'm just wondering why that is.
People have the shits with higher rates then.
They're guaranteed those.
What's the Chinese coming? Page 7.
Page 2. Expenditure on public toilets jumps by nearly $1 million in 1 year. Okay. The noxious weeds, moving to the environment, page 3, noxious weeds, both income and expenditure seem to increase rapidly from this current financial year onwards. I was just wondering why that is.
Sorry, those figures are based on the long-term financial plan of the former noxious weeds. We don't have a handle on some of those costs at the moment.
Okay. Going to the economy, which is the next page, page 4, I think. Economic development and tourism, seems to move up $100,000 in the next, over $100,000 in the next year. I was just wondering why that is. Well, you could speak to both, really.
The expenses would reflect a visitor's information guide, the income, and the proportion to that. The expenses reflect the Hilltops economic plan actions that were suggested.
Okay. Also on that page, commercial real estate. We seem to lose money on our investment in commercial real estate. How does that work? What is that? What's the income from? Is that Cherry City Capital Centre, whatever it's called, amongst other things? Why do we lose money? Other people invest in commercial real estate and make money. I don't understand why we're losing money.
They don't have to pay depreciation.
Well, they do. They have to account for it. I think we need to look at our investments if we can't make money on these things and whether we actually should be investing in them. I've always been told that the Cherry Capital Centre was making lots of money, so we should keep it. But if we're losing money, well, maybe we shouldn't. Anyway, we've covered the economic development and tourism. Moving on to infrastructure, the roads income. Just an explanation as to why the rapid increase in income there.
Those incomes include the capital grants.
And the projected result for this year doesn't, or doesn't have grants in? I mean, do we get $12 million more next year in road grants?
Yes, we get, we've projected the heavy vehicles, sorry, I don't know the right terminology, but the heavy vehicle grant and the Fixing Country Road Bridge grant for Bundabo Bridge,
right? Okay.
Which is $8 million.
Okay.
And then there is also Fixing Country Roads on both Maringo and Cunningar.
Yep.
And there are some other bridge grants as well.
Is that also why it's higher in the following year, 2020 as well?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we've split Bundabo over the 2 years, the bridge.
Okay.
And that would explain that one. And there are we've been successful in a lot of grants. Bundabo may not go ahead if we don't get the matching funding.
Mm-hmm.
It has a nil effect on the bottom line.
Okay.
So.
What is plant management? And how do we seem to make money out of that?
That helps that fund and replace our plant. I wouldn't think we'd make money. Yes. And it goes towards the renewal of the capital.
Okay.
So we charge each job that our plant works on a value, and that money's then kept to fund the plant replacement program.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I just interrupt on that? The income from plant management, that is actually from whatever the borrowings, rates, grants. It's not, as alluded to here, it's showing that we make a profit, but the income is actually an allocation
of expenses against our other jobs. It's not. So I'm not understanding your question.
I guess correct in that if we get grant income to do up a road, that income then gets allocated to the plant to work on those roads.
The plant gets allocated to the road and is funded, the road is funded from the grant.
So the cost of the plant, the higher rate that the plant is charged for, goes against the cost of the grant for that construction job.
Yes.
So it goes across any construction job, either a council job or a grant job or for even private works.
Operational.
It'll actually return an income into that fund, which is used then to offset it. It's used for the cost of the replacement as we work through it as well.
I think, well, where I understood when we were on Harden Council, if we received $5 million in income from whatever sources for our grants for road works, and then you had 10 pieces of plant working on it, just for simple equations, assuming no other input costs, those plant would get $500,000 each, and then that is your income for those plant as listed here. Is that correct? Well, then where does the plant income come from? That's right, because you've got the grants for the roadwork.
It's operational as well. It's not just. Sorry. Wherever we use our plant on any roads, be it operational capital, we determine that it will cost us this much money to maintain and renew that plant.
Where do you get the money from for that?
We charge it against the job. Like if we were a contractor, we're charging it against our
You're
road
answering
job.
the question I just said. So if you get grant money for the job, that's where your income comes from.
But it comes from operational as well, is probably what I was trying to say. It's not just capital and it's not just grant.
The last section, the governance leadership, the expenditure if there's civic leadership drops radically. I assume that's the IT system, is it, or is it something else?
It's the merger costs,
Right.
including the IT system,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Management and accountability, also an expenditure, goes up fairly radically from this year on. Why is that?
The IT costs come out of merger and they're reflected in those costs going forward. With the new system, there will be an increased cost in those areas.
So it's going to cost us nearly $1 million a year extra every year to have this new IT system.
No, it won't cost us that much. That's part of it.
Oh.
There's also the web, the live streaming.
There's an increase in
There's increased insurances.
It's $500,000.
Okay. And also the next one is the final one I've got here is expenditure on corporate support. See that goes down. What's the reasoning for that? What is corporate support?
People sort of put in corporation. We're currently using a few transition staff to help us with some of these projects, so some of those wages will reduce.
Okay.
And it could be a move of some costs as well from corporate support to management.
Okay. That's the end of my questions. I just repeat. I think this process has been an absolute debacle, and I hope it's not repeated.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace, for those questions, and thank you, staff, for the answers you could give. We're on up to Councillor Flaherty.
Look, regrettably, I concur with Councillor Wallace's comments. I thought I must have missed something in this whole process. I had a meeting with one of the directors last week, which was brief, but I couldn't understand the road funding allocations. I thought, look, I'm flummoxed by it all. I really think in the 28 days we've got between us putting this out to public display and finalising this budget, we need to have some good hard looks at, or firstly get advice on what actually all the breakdowns are, and we need to look at how we can prune the budget up apart from anything else. I think I've been gobsmacked by it, and I think I'm nearly used those words to the director that I met with, but it doesn't make for good reading. I understand all the comings and goings we've had in the office. I've made representations to the local member, but it doesn't seem to get any better. But we really need to get a hand around this, because we're going to be voting on it. And as sure as night follows day, members of the public will come back to us in 6 months and say, why did you vote for this? Why is the money being spent on that? And we'll say, I'm not too sure, I don't know what you're talking about. We'll come back and ask a director and they'll say, you voted on it. That's exactly what happens.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Any other questions or comments by any councillors? Councillor Armstrong.
Mr Mayor, just in the delivery plan, page 40, item 4.2.5.1.1, develop long-term infrastructure funding plans for the provision of council. I noticed that that's for the infrastructure department, and I also suggest that probably should be corporate and community, because the finance section should be involved in that. Page 51, 5.3.3.4. Where are we? Can we change that to implement enterprise risk management? Because I think that risk management needs to be implemented across the whole organisation and into the decision-making process at all levels. That's essentially what enterprise risk management is.
Will the community actually know what these codes are for?
I doubt it.
I mean,
They're probably a legend wouldn't hurt.
There was one originally, unfortunately when we merged the documents it got lost, so I do apologise.
On page 54 we refer to 11 sewer reservoirs. Where are the 11 sewer reservoirs? I'm not aware of any sewer reservoirs in the former Young Shire. Or are there sewer reservoirs in the former Harden or Borough Shire? They may be in a sewerable condition, but...
Before you make any disparaging comments, I would conclude that there's probably an error in the actual description there. So
I suggest that's a fairly serious error, and that we need to adjust that. If we want to move to the capital work budget, capital works, I think that most councillors will be interested in working through that. Just before we get there, one question in regards to the fees and charges. I noticed that on there's a miscellaneous use of the showground at Burrawa with no minimum charge, just to be set by the General Manager. What's miscellaneous use, and what would constitute miscellaneous use, and why would there be no charge for it? No minimum charge for it?
I'll check the wording. The miscellaneous use, it has been used once previously where the solo caravan group came, so it was a negotiated cost, not a... so I'll check the wording on it, but it should be in negotiation with the General Manager.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why there's no minimum charge. That perhaps the General Manager of the day might negotiate a charge for gratis. In a commercial sense, that probably isn't a very wise move. But,
no.
But
I think I'll
perhaps there should be minimum
check
charge
that wording
for that.
and remove it, yes, and correct it. Thank you, Greg.
An old cherub of mine that is going to come up again. The disparate charges for similar sports between the three areas. I note that rugby league, Burrawa $13.55, Harden $13.95, and Young $4,165. It would be nice to know what the difference was between those. If it comes down to the grounds, then the number of grounds, well, the services provided by those grounds, fantastic, but I think that the community are probably going to take one look at that and say, why can't we harmonise these charges and make them all $13.55? They certainly won't be asking, can they all be made $4,165? So I think we need to take a better look at harmonising our fees and charges as we move forward with this. Capital Works. Where are we? $300,000 for the Cherry Capital roof. It's in there. It's been in the budgets now for 10 years. I'll take Councillor Wallace's advice on that. Are we going to do it or not? Because if we're not going to do it, let's take it out, and perhaps one of the strategies that is suggested in the plan is to review our assets and our catalogue of assets, and I'd suggest that perhaps is one asset that should be that is in the catalogue of assets that we should be reviewing whether we need to be in that business or not. If we don't need to be in the business, we don't need to spend the $300,000.
The $300,000 has been used to leverage council's contribution to a grant to set up the incubator.
$300,000 for the roof. So it's not capital funding. Is that $300,000 not capital funding to repair the roof? Is to provide an incubator for business incubator. Is that correct?
The grant that council is applying, that money was used as council's contribution to a grant for grant funding to build the incubator on the first floor of the Cherry Capital Centre.
So was that a yes or a no? That's all I wanted was a yes or a no. Fairly simple response.
No.
Okay, then why have we got $300,000 in there again? Are we going to spend another $300,000 on yet another incubator? Or are we going to fix the roof? Or are we going to sell the asset and save the $300,000?
I think that's yet to be determined.
So I guess, Mr Mayor, through you, the question is, why is it saying it's for a roof when it's not?
I think the rationale was if we don't get the grant, then we'll repair the roof.
So my question is, why isn't that reflected? Unless the question was asked, councillors would have thought that that 300 was for the roof.
Question's been taken. I think the best answer that could be given at the present time probably has been. It will be something that will need to be addressed. Councillor Tuckerman, Councillor Armstrong, we all agree on that. Back to Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. There are two lots of them STP amenities for $20,000 in the sewerage. Is that duplication? Is that the same amenities or are they different locations?
No, I've added the word Harden in front of the second one. We picked that up tonight, I'm sorry.
What is the courthouse DA and why does it require $200,000 worth of concrete encasement of the sewer?
That was a commitment made by the former Borough Council in 2013 to support the development of the new motel at the courthouse.
So it's a subsidy for the
Yep.
Okay. Why is it coming out of sewer fund?
We'll be doing the works and will be...
Why is it coming out of sewer fund instead of general fund? If it's a subsidy for a business...
We're improving the asset to assist the business. So it's our asset, and we're making the changes to our asset to assist the business.
I suggest that's one interpretation. My interpretation would be that is a contribution to establishment of the business. It should be reported through the general fund as business assistance, not as sewer mains capital work. Because if the asset is not in need of renewal, or the building was not going ahead, that work would not be done. Ergo, it is not a capital item because of the need to renew it. It is a contribution towards the cost of development. That would be funded by the general fund, not the sewer fund.
I think at the time, Greg, they brought the replacement forward because of the state of the main, not increase the size of it. So it was a replacement brought forward.
So is it?
We can change the description on it.
If this is encasement, is it not replacement of the main and encasement?
I don't understand the terminology, so I can get that.
Can we just get some more details about what that is?
We'll just take that on notice.
That concerns me. There's $1.5 million in there for sewer rehabilitation. Where is the job? Where are the jobs? Can we please get some detail on that, so we know where those works are? We've got $264,000 for water mains renewal, and then $300,000 a year afterwards for Harden. I noted in the last Special Schedule 7 submitted by the former Harden Shire Council, there was no infrastructure backlog in water mains. Certainly there were no water mains with a condition rating of 4 or worse. I'm just wondering why suddenly $264,000 worth of replacements next year and then a further $300,000 a year for the following 9 years is necessary. Can someone please advise me why that is? The asset management plan that was listed on the website certainly doesn't indicate why that would be required. And I realise that staff will take these on notice, and I'm happy with that. The $1.2 million rising main that's being renewed, that certainly doesn't appear anywhere on the asset renewal schedule there at all, and I'd question whether it's part of the former Harden Shire Council's 10-year financial plan as well. What does it service, and effectively why does it need to be renewed? $140K for telemetry in there. Telemetry for what? And where?
Harden water.
Okay, is that a replacement or new?
It's renewal, Greg.
It's renewal. Okay.
It wasn't in their former plan either. It hadn't been identified to be renewed, but it requires it.
So it wasn't funded by the former Shire?
No.
Okay, so it obviously couldn't have been too high a priority. Otherwise it would have been in there, I would think. $380,000 for Jugiong Reservoir duplication, and then a further $200,000 for a rising main. I couldn't find it anywhere in there either. Is that the same case?
I doubt it, because we've moved it back from the current year, Greg. So the current year is based on the former council's long-term financial plans.
Okay, so that was in there.
Water and sewer staff have made some adjustments.
I'm just concerned that these projects have popped into the 10-year financial plan when they haven't been potentially been on the radar for any of the former local government authorities in their 10-year financial plans. And perhaps the one that concerns me the most is $1.3 million for a rising main replacement in Young. I'd like to think that there were other opportunities to either rehabilitate that main or to take steps to reduce the incidence of dirty water, such that there was no need to spend $1.3 million on replacing a section of cast iron water main. Is that $1.3 million costed? Do we have, or is that a projected figure? Do we have some solid figures on that?
We'll take that on notice.
Okay, look, they're my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong, for those queries. Councillor Flannery.
Look, similar questions I had regarding the rising mains replacements, because I wasn't aware of some of them from Harden Shire. Certainly wasn't aware of Back Creek rising main in Young. I guess I've made comments, and I guess I have made comments about some of the capital items proposed, such as the depot relocation. I can't find it now, but there's an allocation of $53,000 almost till the end of time for library books, $8,000 for DVDs. I don't confess to know anything about library books and DVDs, but I would have thought with digital media that's hard to see that sort of money needs to be spent. So if we could get some more information on those aspects. Those two items, I look forward to information on the rising main. In the list of borrowings, which I can't find, there was a summary of the list of borrowings. It's on page 10, which wouldn't be page 10 of the overall. Could we get STP conveyancing loan, STP conveyancing / reuse? Could we get some information on what, particularly from the Harden Shire councillor's perspective, what some of these loans are, noting, for better or worse, there's only one loan there pertaining to the former Harden Shire, so I know nothing about these loans. Is 10 years the maximum term of a loan under State Government Acts? I'm not aware whether it is, but I would have thought most of these items have been depreciated over 40 years, so can we get some detail on whether the loans could be extended? Are they being paid? It looks like they're being paid out in full within this term, although it's not clear to me. The Buyro Main Street project should have expired by now. What the terms of that loan are? It just says the amount was $1.2 million.
10 plus 10 loan from 2007, so 2027 will be the payout.
But if you're paying back $150,000 a year in 10 years, you should have paid back the capital plus the interest, so that doesn't add up to me. How does that work? That's got pretty awful terms.
We originally had pretty awful terms, and then we renegotiated at the 10 years.
So you must have been interest rate up around 12 or 14%. I find that astounding. Could I get some advice on just what are there any legislative requirements to pay some of these loans out within 10 years? I mean, clearly these are lifetime, semi-lifetime renewal projects, and yet it's having an impact on our budget.
They've been negotiated loans, so we would have to probably pay a break to renegotiate those loans, the current loans.
Can we get details on what they may or may not be, because it's going to affect our ability to fund other asset renewal, and that's the general theme of this budget is we are going to run out of money by 2022 or 2020 or whatever year is. So firstly we should be looking at the existing loans, whether they're appropriately financed. The conveyancing loans, could they be explained to me, please?
I'll have to take that on notice. It's the description on the loan information that I have. I think it's got to do with...
I may be able to assist Councillor Flannery with that. The conveyance main is the sewer main that runs the sewerage from the urban area down to the new sewage treatment works. That was subject to separate borrowings. So I think that should be termed a conveyance main, sewer main.
Thank you.
But just on that, at the February meeting of council, we looked at renewing a loan for the sewage treatment works. One $5 million tranche had fallen due. We were going to refinance through T Corp. Subsequent to the development of the 10-year financial plan. Will that financing through T Corp be completed prior to the 30th of June?
No, we factored the repayment of that loan in and determined that if we're going to borrow, we borrow further down when we need it. Greg, we still have enough cash in that area to fund that.
Okay, so
area.
that's I wondered why the change in the cash. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, I've got some questions, if I may. The Greyhound Club in Young appears to be getting charged $6,080 a year. Can I get any sort of explanation as to why they are slugged that and how we come to that costing compared to other sporting groups in town? So a Sports Council decision of the former Young Shire Council, or... Okay. Another question. Swimming pool in Harden, the only information provided is that fees and charges will be worked out before the season starts. It hasn't occurred for any other pool in the Hilltop Shire. I'm just wondering why that's the case for Harden.
I'll have to take that on notice and get that fixed. We'll have fees and charges in there.
Okay.
And they'll reflect the other locations.
Yep. Third question, the fields in Harden where we're charging clubs for use of those facilities. Senior soccer doesn't exist and hasn't for at least the last 25 years, but is listed there. Junior soccer does. And the tennis club is the only other sporting organisation that isn't currently being charged anything to use the facilities. Is there any explanation on that?
We'll have to get some answers for you on that one.
Okay. On to roads, and I'm nearly done. It looks like there's $4,985,000 set aside in 2019 for the Gaylong Road, with FCR in brackets next to it. Can I have an explanation as to what that's being spent on that road?
Through the Mayor, that's a grant project that we're trying to facilitate at the moment. Out of two pockets of money from two grants to rebuild the Gaylong Road from Ubindal back up to Carngo Road to the north.
Okay, so is that going through Kalangan Road?
No, it'll start from Kalangan Road.
No,
sorry, it'll start from Ubindal Road and go north.
Go north. So is that money allocated to improve the road that will then join up with the road between Harden and Bora, the main road?
Yes, that's correct.
Yep. Okay. Second one, Michael McCormick allocated, I'll just make sure I've got my figure right here, $4,672,537 for a complete replacement of Bundarbo Bridge. It looks, according to our paperwork, to have been costed at $9,445,075. Where are we getting the extra $4,772,538 from to complete the project?
Through the Mayor, again, that is a two-pronged grant application. One's state and the other one's federal.
Thank you.
Mr Mayor, just a question for the Director relating back to Harden Pool, and I've been on about this for a while. At the October meeting following council elections, we were presented with draft budget information, and there was a $400,000 allocation for the coming year for capital expenditure on the Harden filtration system. I've been noting at a number of meetings that it's just disappeared into the ether. There is money allocated to the Harden Pool, including disabled access. There's a serious filtration issue. There was a serious filtration issue at Harden Pool. They were struggling to get the legislatively required circulation. Could the Director advise me on whether the system has miraculously improved, and if not, where the money went that was allocated to it, and why would be allocating for disabled access when there's seemed to be the threat that the pool may be closed down because of inability to chlorinate adequately?
Through the Mayor, I'll answer the first question. The system is an old system. It's a 50-year-old system, and it hasn't miraculously made a recovery. As for falling off the long-term financial, I probably can't answer that question. With respect to the other projects that were listed there, I believe they were community-driven projects, ramp and other, and probably I'm not sure whether under the grants we can actually spend on filtration, but I'll take that one on notice as to whether that can be accommodated into there.
I'm just noting the former Harden Shire long-term plan. There was $180,000 allocated for pool disinfection in 16-17 and $180,000 for 17-18. Has that been used? Has that been completed, or is it deferred, or do we know? Pardon? That's what I'm asking.
Through the Mayor, that work has not been completed.
Okay.
So do we still struggle to get the mandatory circulation requirements, and if so, shouldn't we be allocating money to fix that, because we won't have a happy community if problems arise?
Through the Mayor, I believe we're still struggling with circulation. We do meet our chlorination needs. It is an antiquated system, and it would certainly benefit from having a more modern filtration system.
Some more work needs to be done around that area, but the sound of it to get some costings and just see where that will land, I imagine. Staff note that, please. Okay, how are we going?
Just, Mr Mayor, I'm sorry to press the button, the red button again, but HARDEN domestic waste management charge, is that inclusive of the FOGO charge?
Yeah, that's what you get to, I think.
We'll get to that.
Sorry, I'll have to take that one on notice. I thought they were separated out, but I can't be certain.
Okay, can we just can council be provided with confirmation in that regard? Because if the FOGO is included in that, then that will need to be adjusted, because from my recollection the FOGO service hasn't been provided, even though the charge has been levied, for the largest part of this current calendar year.
And we don't want to be looking like the banks.
The last thing we want to do is look like a bank.
Councillor Armstrong, for the newies on the block, could you just explain FOGO?
Food organics,
Okay, righto.
food scraps, chook food.
Through the Mayor, it's food organics and garden organics. We are still collecting the garden organics, so the green waste we're still collecting.
Yes, but you're not doing the food.
But we're not doing the food. But I'm unsure about the charge, so I will get back to you.
Thank you, Director. Councillor O'Connor.
Just a question about the Rural Fire Service Control Centre. This is coming from lack of knowledge. It says there's no money allocated for ongoing increases. Now, with the RFS Control Centre, are there increases as well as the 11.8% levy that's charged every year? Will there be extra increases?
My experience is the regional centre is cost neutral to the local government area. The budget is worked down on. There is a contribution to it. It's already built in to the 11% levy in the budget that actually comes through to us in terms of what we do with fire trucks and stations. So I would not expect, in the light of what I've known previously, is that would be included in that. I think the issues around the budgeting at the moment is actually getting the centre completed, and then the costs that we have to put aside to actually seeing that completed.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Councillor Horton.
Mr Mayor, if I could just ask a question about General Manager. On page 167, we start talking about asset management strategy.
Yep.
And 28 pages later, we've been given what action is going to be taken, great detail. My question is, how are we going to action the strategy without an assets manager?
Yeah. There are asset staff already employed, but I believe, and this is me personally, that we need to look at it as an executive in terms of it's an important project, and we need to make sure that we can handle it with those resources. It probably, I expect that we may need external resources to assist us get through, particularly the hard parts.
Thank you.
Thank you. How are we going around the table? Most of what I had some questions about had been asked by one or several councillors. I have got one other one that hasn't been mentioned, that is down there in the waste management for Young in Victoria Street, in a transfer station and resource recovery centre, and it's $300,000, and I know for a fact it wasn't in the 10-year plan formally, so I'm just wondering if that's fallen out of the sky or where that's come from, or is it a need for it? If someone could take that on notice, or if they know the answer to that now, I'll be quite happy to take it now. But if you don't, I'm quite happy for council to come back to me.
This is different to them.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I was looking at your page.
And
This
yeah,
is
look,
divided into a different.
the sewer mains rehabilitation, where that is, it's been asked, so, and the Back Creek Road at Young, it wasn't in our plan, so that was another one I had marked down as well. Council, we've been through that list of capital works pretty well, and we all agree, I think, that there's some need to be looked at and some clarification around some of it. To see where we go, Councillor Wallace spoke with concerns earlier, and I appreciate those concerns about how this process has been dealt with. It's unfortunate that it's got to Council at this late stage. We will, in a perfect world, this would have been dealt with and had more detail far earlier than this. Staff have listened tonight to what you've asked. I hope, if the answers are available, that they will be got to Council as quick as they can, given I understand the workload and the pressure, but I think from Council's point of view the budget is definitely a big priority, and I know Council staff have been hard at it. What we need to do as a Council when we come back out of committee is to look to see if we can resolve enough to put a draft, be this draft, out to public exhibition, to give the public time to look at it. At the same time, give ourselves and staff more time to work around the issues we have with it, so that we can get ready and have them ready to be addressed before we get to the stage on the 27th of June or whatever it is and have to put a budget up. We'd rather be happy with it and had looked at it intensely between now and then, albeit this draft isn't ideal, and we all, and I don't think you'll get any kickback from staff there that they've done the best they can, but if we were to put this draft up, it would give the public something to look at and probably have more responses than we normally would get. It also gives Council time but to look at it and try and rectify some issues and get to the point where, if we need be, in early June, we can have workshops to the point to where we work it, to where we've got a budget that we will be happy to take to the meeting in June 27, I think is the date, don't quote me on that. But that is totally up to Council. Questions have been asked. I hope staff can, as I said, will get back to us with their answers to that. But when we come out, it'll be up to Council to resolve whether we do put this on display or whether they'd like to take some other action, and I will leave that completely up to Council.
Just, Mr Mayor, I'm going to foreshadow an amendment to the recommendation.
Council.
So we're still in committee now, so I'll foreshadow it in committee.
Okay.
Mr Mayor, I acknowledge the time frame we're working under, but I think we need to make some serious adjustments to this budget before we put it out to public display. Not that you ever get much feedback, sadly, but I'll be guided by the recommendations of those who have expressed concern here tonight, but I think we need to amend a number of the... we either need to get clarification on what some of the costings and items are that have been raised, or we pull them out subject to confirmation.
Thank you for that, Councillor Flannery. Okay, if there's any other discussion or anyone wants any comments before we come out of committee?
Just one
Councillor
brief question, Mr Mayor. If we put this up on public display for 28 days and then we do make wholesale changes, will we then have to put it back on display, or can we push ahead after that if we do a series of workshops? Just for clarification.
No, the purpose of it is to go out to public display is actually get to see comments, and we listen to those comments. We can also make comments at the same time.
But through you, Mr Mayor, if there are substantial changes, it will then have to go out for display again for 28 days.
We're not talking about, we wouldn't be talking about substantial changes. If you've got substantial changes, then we need to make it now.
Mr General Manager, from what we've been presented, I think there's quite clear in the room that there will need to be some information before those decisions can be made.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Tuckerman. So if there's no other general...
Do you want to have a workshop next week?
I was just going to inquire as to, I don't have the list in front of me when our next workshop is. It's obviously in one of the villages, whether we have it postpone that and have it here. I don't know that we can put a budget up without some reference to this report that we've got here. I mean, a facility that's going to cost $32 million.
Well, I'm going to talk to that in closed. Councillor Flannery, thank you. That's why that's confidential, marked on top of the document. Thank you. Look, okay, council, before we come out of committee, it's we can make a decision. Councillor Armstrong suggested that he might foreshadow an amendment, whether we look at workshop again to look at this. I'm quite happy to go with whatever council would like to recommend. So,
Can we have the foreshadowed amendment in committee at the moment?
I'm going to suggest to council that not make this budget tonight, that we defer that for a further 7 days to enable the staff to answer the questions that they and come back with an alternate capital works program that is primarily based upon capital works which are grant funded.
Can you just explain that again? Sorry.
Greg, could you put your mic on, please, mate? Councillor, sorry.
Essentially, the process would be to remove those capital jobs that were funded from reserves or funded from rate revenue. So we would be moving into, Hilltops Council would be moving into what I will call park mode in terms of building new stuff. We would only be spending the grant funds that we've got, or where we have essential asset renewals such as reseals, obviously water and sewer main renewals where they have to be done. They're essential renewals, but otherwise all other capital works would be parked, subject to further review. There would also be a second part that the 19-20 budget, the council will be provided with a minimum of 4 workshops commencing no later than December in the first year.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor, can I just ask a question? Should we be looking at a whole day where we can sit and get the answers to the questions, go through the budget, if everyone could attend, and let's get it sorted very quickly so we can get this draft out to the public?
I agree totally with you, Councillor Tuckman, and the thing about that date on that night is village meeting in Frogmore, which we've deferred. I think we've deferred it twice already, so that community would be pretty disappointed if some of us didn't show there that night. So whether we need to organise a day, council, where it's pretty important, some might not be able, but we make a day to give everyone time and staff time to sit down and work our way through this, as Councillor Tuckman just said. So with that in mind, if we come out of committee.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask one question to staff? How long will it take for them to get the information and prepare for a workshop? Like when could we look at having a workshop?
How long do you think we need? 3 hours?
How long have we been here tonight? What time is it now?
1 hour. 2 hours. Yeah.
An hour and a half, probably. An hour and a half on the other one.
All we've done is expressed our concern, so I think that 3 hours is probably going to scratch the surface of half a day.
I think Councillor Tuckman's question was how long will it take staff to have the answers ready?
Yes.
So we can organise a date. And it doesn't have to be on a Wednesday, it can be on a Thursday, a Friday, a Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah.
Weekends are a little bit taken up, but we could organise another day.
We're just looking at diaries, Council.
So we want to make that 23rd. That's got to make that. Do we go to a Thursday afternoon?
I think we have to make it and go with it.
So the 17th?
17th?
From 1?
17th?
Does that suit?
Thursday the 17th, 1 p.m. Okay, everyone like to lock that into their calendar. Location?
All right.
Okay, thank you. That's a little bit young. Right.
Yep.
Okay, so then, given that there's a motion, amendment foreshadowed, will come out of, someone like to move us out of committee, then we'll go to Councillor Armstrong with that and do that process?
In light of the impending workshop, I'm wondering whether the foreshadowed motion is now amended as necessary.
So would you...
Effectively, council will be
To do
deferring
referring?
that decision,
That's the motion.
until after that workshop.
Well, that...
However, the second part of the motion, I would like to think we could still consider.
Okay.
Given the response from councillors tonight in regards to the lack of cleaning and the lack of information, file information, I think it's appropriate that we set the course now for the next year.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Very valid point. Okay then, so we'll get someone to move us out and then we'll... Councillor Armstrong.
Just before, can we get just a bit of clarification on the information we'll get before that meeting? Because we don't want to be spending 4 hours asking questions on the information we receive to then be pushed into a corner about trying to pass it. So I don't know whether we want to go around once more, but can we get clarification on either from what's been discussed here tonight as to what we will be forwarded before the meeting? And I also think we need some sort of agenda and time frame at the meeting so that we move through whether we start with capital or expenditure, or we don't want to be going one person asking about rates and charges, the next person asking about capital. We need a structure for the meeting.
Mr Mayor, may I suggest that there is a recording of this meeting tonight, and if staff could look at what the questions have been asked and put forward, and then prepare a paper to go out to council prior to the workshop, and then work out a strategy as to how we go through the workshop process.
That makes sense, and the General Manager's been taking notes of each question, I believe, from what I can see, so he'll have most of it covered there, and what may have been missed can be picked up on the recording, as you said, and by getting something back out to councillors, if there's something being missed or something a council would further like, they have time to get back to staff to clarify, because as Councillor Flannery said, we don't want to really get there and spend a half a day and after 4 hours we'll still be talking in circles. So I thank everyone for their input, and it's much appreciated. So would someone like to move that we come out of committee? Move Councillor Manchester, seconded Councillor O'Connor. Thank you. I've lost now. So we had a recommendation there, but I had an amendment foreshadowed to that recommendation.
We could move an amendment now.
Could we have one to move that amendment?
Look, I'm happy to recommend that the delivery plan be reviewed. Delivery plan, operational plan, workforce strategy, asset management strategy, and long-term financial plan be reviewed by council at the workshop, and that the staff provide no less than 4 workshops commencing in December 2019 in regard to the 2019-2020 budget.
Clarification, Mr Mayor, is that an amendment or are you putting a motion?
That's a motion.
It's a motion.
We have a recommendation. We don't need to accept the recommendation from staff, so I would suggest you're putting a motion, and I'm happy to second it.
Thank you, Councillor Tuggerman. Have we got any discussion or debate in regard to the motion that is on the board, councillors? If not, I'll put the motion that's on the board. All those in favour? Aye. Again? So be it. Thank you very much, councillors, for that matter. So that brings me to closed council to discuss the mayoral minute. So could I have a...
Well, you need to.
I move that we move into closed, seconded by Councillor Stadmiller. Thank you.
Have a break.